So these are the 11 engagements of the material mind, which are keeping the mind occupied in the material nature instead of in Krishna consciousness. Anything else? Yes?
Takže záleží především na inteligenci, která dokáže změnit hmotnou mysl duchovní.
Je to inteligence, která mění hmotnou mysl duchovní. Is it intelligence who can transform the material mind into the spiritual mind?
Not by itself, no.
Sama inteligence to nedokáže.
The material mind is a product of the mode of goodness, and the material intelligence is a product of the mode of passion. But this material intelligence, you see, just like Lord Brahma, he's Rajaguna avatar. So he's the incarnation, the original form of this buddhi, Rajasa buddhi. So on the one side, Brahma he's manifesting this creation. But on what basis is he doing that? On the basis of instructions he's receiving from Paramatma. So if we use this intelligence to receive transcendental knowledge from Paramatma, from Shastra, Sadhu, Guru, yes, then the intelligence becomes a worthy guide of the mind. But only when it is receiving transcendental knowledge from bona fide source. Otherwise, the material intelligence itself is just there to help the senses do their work. And it's a storehouse of memories, and it just has material functions. It's the place of our dreams, sleep and dreams. You see? So it's the intelligence that has to be spiritualized first of all. Yes?
I always wonder in this connection what is the place of the so-called common sense in this picture. Že pořád přemýšlím, kde má v tomhle obrázku jako svoje místo takzvaný zdravý rozum.
How do you mean common sense?
Like, because I was trying to tell you one exchange I had with my Guru Maharaj in India was that he told me all our practical activities we perform on the basis of the common sense. And I objected, actually there's a purport in the second canto where it says the philosophy of Krishna consciousness has nothing to do with the common sense. And he said, yes, but now we're talking about practical things, not the philosophy. So this common sense by which we decide what to do and see what is right. Takže já jsem to ilustroval jako rozhovorem s Guru Maharajem, který mě říkal, všechny praktické činnosti, které my Krišně děláme na základě zdravého rozumu. Já jsem říkal, ale Bhagavatamu je v jednom výkladu, že filozofie vědomí Krišně nemá nic dočinění se zdravým rozumem. On říkal, ale teď mluvíme o praktických věcech a ne filozofii. Zdravý rozum, jak se rozhodovat, co udělat správně a jak to udělat.
So there's a purport in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam in which Srila Prabhupada also includes mind, intelligence and false ego as senses. So together these three make up the subtle body, and the subtle body is the common sense, because all the senses, what we see, what we hear, that's all being fed into the subtle body.
Všechno, co vnímáme smysly, co slyšíme, vidíme, tak se tím krmí to subtilní tělo.
And mind, intelligence, and false ego are just different departments of the subtle body.
A mysl, inteligence, falešné ego jsou jenom různá oddělení subtilního těla.
So mind receives the sense impressions and sorts them according to the mind's taste or feelings.
Mysl získává smyslové věmy a třídí je podle svých pocitů a záliv.
And then the intelligence also sorts them, but on a more subtle basis,
Inteligence je také třídila na subtilnějším základu.
more abstract intellectual value system.
Má abstraktnější a intelektuálnější systém hodnot.
So, sometimes the intelligence will override the mind.
Někdy inteligence jako překoná mysl.
Just like, for example, taking medicine.
Například praní medicíny.
So the intelligence knows you're sick and you have to take this medicine.
Inteligence ví, že jste nemocný, musíte brát medicínu.
But when the medicine goes on the tongue, and the tongue informs the mind goes, oh, it's tasting very bad.
Když ta medicína se dostane na jazyk a teda informaci myslí, tak si říkají, to má hroznou chuť.
And the mind wants to tell the mouth, spit it out.
Mysl chce říct, puse vyplní to.
But the intelligence steps in and says, no, you can't do that.
Vstoupí do toho inteligence a řekne, to nemůžeš udělat.
This is good for you.
To je pro tebe dobré.
This is medicine.
To je medicína.
You see? And then you can also see the false ego in this.
Taky můžete vidět falešné ego.
See, the false ego is interested in self-preservation.
Zájem na sebeochrání.
So the false ego also say, yes, it is good.
Falešné ego taky řekne, to je dobré.
False ego is the finest of the three.
Falešné ego je z nich nejjemnější.
And it pervades the other two. It pervades the buddhi and the manas, the mind.
Prostupuje skrze buddhi a manas, nebo mysl.
Yeah.
Also speculating that common sense also often means to make the right, proper decision. And so I thought, is it maybe that's when we are able to hear the super soul even without our knowing that we made the right decision. So can it also involve super soul in this?
Well, you want to translate your question?
Já jsem ještě spekuloval, jestli v tom může být taky nějak zahrnutá na duši, protože jako zdravý rozum často znamená, že děláme správné rozhodnutí, jako, a jestli to teda znamená, že jsme schopni slyšet radu na duše, takže ona v tom je taky zapojená, nejen jako myslím, to je vlastně společné.
Well, I would agree with that if it's understood that this is indirect knowledge coming from the super soul, not direct. Direct would mean transcendental knowledge.
Abych s tím rozuměl, s tím souhlasil s tím, že to je nepřímé poznání od duše, to je přímé poznání od duše, je transcendentální.
But this common sense as practical knowledge, you see that's there even in the dog and the cat.
A zdravý rozum, jako to praktické poznání, to mají i kočky a psi.
That modern science has this word instinct.
Moderní věda tomu říká instinkt.
Dogs and cats, they just know what to do.
Psi a kočky prostě vědí, co mají dělat.
As dogs and cats.
Jako kočky a psi.
Without having had to go to school or anything or read any books.
Museli chodit do školy nebo číst nějaké knížky.
So, yes, Paramatma is giving that knowledge, ultimately. But this is indirect knowledge. This is not actually the knowledge that's not really why Paramatma is there in the heart, to just give that knowledge. So that, think of it as light. Knowledge is light. So someone whose consciousness is very, very colored by the modes of nature, then they're only able to perceive light in terms of the colors. They'll see yellow light and red light and blue light. And that means the common sense of, acting within this body. But the clear light, the pure light, when the modes are removed. You see, this is the direct light of Paramatma, or the direct knowledge of Krishna consciousness.
To je jasné, čisté světlo, kde jsou kvality odstraněné, tak to je přímé světlo Paramatmy a přímé poznání vědomí Krishny.
Yes?
Já jsem chtěl pokračovat ještě ve té otázce, protože Maharaj hovořil hodně o vztazích mezi džívou a hmotou. Jestli by mohl více komentovat o funkci nadduší v této roli.
Jaká je funkce nadduše ve vztazích mezi džívou a hmotou? What is the function of the super soul in the relationships between jiva and the matter?
Well, he's giving the matter. He's giving the intelligence by which we can engage in the matter, in the material energy. He's giving the senses the power, the prana, by which they can work. In short, he's giving the whole show. You take away Paramatma and there wouldn't be much left. But the one thing that he's not giving is our choice. So I was explaining this the other day. The same situation, living entity, Prakriti on one side, Paramatma on the other side. The same situation can be pure, is an opportunity to serve the Lord, yajna, perform sacrifice, to satisfy the Lord and participate nicely in this particular lila of the Lord, Vyavahara lila. Or it can simply be what we call Maya. Manaksastan indriyani prakriti-stani karshati. Struggling with the mind and the sense objects. The difference is determined by our choice. I thought when we were in Lututin, because we were lecturing in the garden, so then I started to talk about the garden. And I was pointing out, consider all in this garden that's given by Krishna. The seeds from which the plants grow, where do they come from? Krishna. The earth in which you plant the seeds, where does that come from? Krishna. The water which nourishes the seeds, where does that come from? Krishna. The sunshine which is needed for the plants to grow, where does that come from? Krishna. So you take away any of those, you can't have a garden. But even you have all of those, you don't necessarily have a garden either. Because there's one thing that we have to contribute, and that's our work. So we have to choose, we choose to work in such a way as to bring forth a garden from all these wonderful, all these absolutely necessary gifts given by the Lord. You see, so you can choose to work nicely and have a nice garden, or you can choose to be lazy and say, well, let Krishna do it. After all, he's providing everything anyway. So let him also make the garden. But then you'll just get, so many weeds and thorns, and it will look very terrible. Mm-hmm. So that's our choice.
To je naše volba.
That's our contribution.
To je náš příspěvek.
It's up to us.
To je na nás.
We can make very nice sacrifice
Můžeme dělat krásnou oběť
using the Lord's energy in His service.
s použitím Pánovy energie v jeho služby.
But you see, that choice is up to us.
Ta volba je na nás.
We cannot say, yes, I'm surrendered to Krishna, so therefore let Him do everything.
Nemůžu říct, já jsem odevzdaný Krišnovi, tak ať on všechno udělá.
That is actually not surrender.
To není odevzdání.
Like Prabhupada said, we don't find in Bhagavad Gita that Krishna tells Arjuna, you just sit down and smoke marijuana and I'll fight the battle for you. Don't worry.
Prabhupada říkal, že my najdeme v Bhagavad Gita, že by Krišna řekl Arjunovi, to je, že se tady posadit kouřit si marihuanu a já tu bitvu vybojuji za to, že si starost.
This is not Bhagavad Gita philosophy.
To není filozofie Bhagavad Gita.
Although in India there's many sadhus who do, they smoke marijuana and they think that they're God-realized persons. And they just, their main activity is, either begging or laying under a tree, smoking and sleeping. But they're not actually following Bhagavad Gita. Yes, Maharaji there.
Svědomí, jestli pochází od paramatmy nebo od myslí. Conscience does become from paramatma or from the mind.
Conscience, yes. Well, you see, you have to understand that ultimately everything is coming from Paramatma, but there's always the question whether direct or indirect.
Musíme chápat, v konečném smyslu všechno pochází od paramatmy, je otázka jenom, jestli to přijme nebo nepřijme.
So conscience, the people who don't have any conscience at all are considered to be mentally deranged. They're called psychopaths.
Lidé, kteří nemají vůbec žádné svědomí, tak se říká, že jsou mentálně narušení psychopaty.
So, fortunately, they're not the majority yet. Most people in this world have some kind of conscience. But most people are not on the line of pure devotional service at the same time. So that means they're getting reminder from the Lord. They're listening to the Lord's guidance over their activities. But because they're not surrendered to the Lord's will completely, therefore that morality that is manifest in their hearts is conditioned. So, there's different religions and different cultures. And so there's therefore different senses of innocence and guilt. So a Hindu, a follower of the Hindu religion, may not be, I think I was saying before, mostly, even among Hindus, there are not many pure devotees of Krishna. So they're not pure devotees of Krishna, but something like, an activity like cow killing a cow and eating the flesh, they have very, very strong moral reaction to that. They consider just the worst thing you can do. Whereas a Muslim or a Christian, no problem. Not that they don't have any conscience, but in that area it doesn't register that there's anything wrong with killing a cow and eating the meat.
V této oblasti neregistruji, že by bylo něco špatného na tom zabít krávu a jíst maso.
So conscience is there, but the modes of nature are different.
Že svědomí tady je, ale kvality přírody jsou různé.
And so, this is, as I said, this is the hearing Paramatma indirectly, receiving knowledge from him indirectly. This means under the modes of nature. Okay, we have 4 minutes left. In the back there. I always ask this question. This is not Brahma Jyoti, to be in Susupti. It is said in the Shastras that it is to be merged into Brahman. But this Brahman means, again, Mahavishnu. And the living entities who are merged in him, they're in the primeval Tamo Guna. So Brahma Jyoti, this is a different experience. So this is the beginning of, this is beyond that. This is the first glimpse of the eternal realm of pure consciousness. It's a faraway glimpse, therefore in Brahma Jyoti nothing is clear, just light. As one comes closer, one enters into the spiritual world, then spiritual forms become apparent. But this Susupti is securely within the modes of nature. Particularly the mode of ignorance. Although again, it is stated in the Shastra, in this Vedanta and Upanishads, that when the jiva is in Susupti, he is wrapped in the arms of Brahman. So, but that Brahman means Mahavishnu. Are there? Okay, we have 2 minutes left.
He said that the humanity always has the free will to decide what kind of free will is it, and is so conditioned by the laws of nature.
I didn't get the first part. The living entity is always what?
He said to have always the free will.
Free will. Yeah, well, yeah. He gives up the free will to become conditioned by the modes of nature. Because real free will mean that choice between Krishna and Maya. And the Bhagavatam is a verse in the 6th canto, I believe, which actually explains this point. When he comes under the modes of nature, then he loses his free will, although an illusion of free will continues on. The illusion of free will is that we're still making choices, but these are choices between different features of our prarabdha karma. So no matter what you choose, it's your karma, you see? It's your karma to have this experience or that experience. You can choose between them. That you have, that power you have. But all you're getting is your karma. however you choose. That means it's within the material nature. A real free will would mean there's opportunity to choose Krishna consciousness. But that is very rare. Brahmanda Brahmete Kon se Bhagavan Jiva Guru Krishna Prasade Bhai Bhakta Latta Beach. Only when the Jiva becomes Bhagavan, fortunate, then by the grace of Krishna he gets Guru, by the grace of Guru he gets Krishna. See, there you can exercise real free will. But you know, most of these living entities, they're not in a position to make any choice like that. Therefore, Prabhupada said, it is our business as devotees, as members of this movement, to make their fortune. We can go to those living entities who are unable to make choice, and we can give them Krishna anyway. That will be their Bhagavan, their great fortune. Alright, so now we have to stop. It's after 12. So tomorrow we will be speaking of the psychology of Bhakti Yoga. Very interesting. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.